All right, so I've had this bike for nearly a year now, and I just want to highlight some of the best modifications that I've added to it. First off, I have a background of racing motocross and arena cross type racing when I was younger, like 10 to 19 years old. My last bike was a 450. I took 10 years off. I got this bike. So I knew how to ride a race bike more aggressively. And when I first got this bike, it wasn't really, it was really fun to re-enter riding again and ride on highways. But as for the trail riding experience and the suspension, that was really, really lacking. And I contemplated for a while just changing bikes completely and upgrading to a KTM 690, which I think would be a really good bike for me. But I live on the road, and just keeping this bike on the back end all the time. And as you can see, like there's quite a bit of wear and tear on this bike over the past year. I didn't really want to have a bike that's, worth twice as much on the back end of my van constantly. So I decided I would invest in suspension on this bike. So the suspension upgrade that I went for is K-Tech front and rear. They're highest end components that they offer for this bike. So I got a dampening setup and 2 springs up front. I had those installed in California by a suspension tech. And then I just did the bolt on for the shock back here. Pretty simple, made a huge difference. I still have to modify a few things with it, just like mess with the clickers and see what works best for the terrain that I'm on. But really, really happy with that upgrade. It makes the bike feel a lot safer. It makes it handle a lot better in corners, on the trail. Just gives me a lot more confidence, and knowing that if I do come upon something that's a big dip, before it was really, really scary. If I was charging in even like 3rd gear, it was really scary to be on this bike and have something come up abruptly, and it made me back off a lot because I knew the bike couldn't handle it if I'd hit it. Now I feel a lot better about the bike. The power on the bike is a little lackluster, and you can't really just lift the front wheel off the ground out of nowhere and get yourself out of situations. But yeah, the suspension has made a huge difference. Really happy with it. As for power mods, nothing's really been done. Still on the stock exhaust, which I don't mind. Actually, I like how quiet it is. I know that it's heavy. I know that I could get more power. But one of the big reasons I keep it is I'm not gonna have this bike forever. I'm just using it in the meantime because it's a really good daily driver for me when I don't want to take the van out. Another thing I like is that there's a big exhaust shield. I added these Giant Loop shields for my Great Basin bag that I got by them. By the way, shout out to Giant Loop. They're an amazing company. I've been using their bags over the past year, and it really, really helps me with my lifestyle of adventuring and climbing and doing work and just a bunch of things, and being based off of this bike and being able to bike pack and whatever, really. So yeah, Giant Loop, that's been a huge upgrade for me too. The Great Basin bag's been my favorite. But recently, this is my tool bag, by the way. I shifted over, so rather than having the Great Basin on all the time, because I kind of destroyed my last one, I decided that I'm just gonna carry a tool bag when I'm out on the trails. And yeah, works pretty well. And I have I think it's called the Buck and Roll tank bag. It's been pretty helpful. Not perfect, don't love the workflow, but for $100, it's a really great tank bag. Other modifications that I really like on the bike. I would say upgrade foot pegs. These are really, really interesting. These are called pivot pegs. So they pivot forward and backward. So when you're on the bike, you have just like a lot more control. The platform's huge compared to the stock ones. I don't think you need pivot pegs. I would say just upgrade to whatever big platform peg you want that's within your budget. But if you really want to spend some money and try something unique, I've really liked the experience of these. I feel really controlled on the bike. I feel like I can really kind of shift my hips around more. It's just kind of a nice flow that I never had experienced before. I went into a shop when I was in, I think, Bend, Oregon one time, and some KTM on the floor had those on it. I was like, what the heck are those? I stood on them and I thought, oh, that'd be really interesting. I'll try those on my bike. And there's a $200 pair of foot pegs, which is probably $150 more than most people want to spend for this bike, but I don't know. I tried them. I like them. Yeah, get whatever you want. Handlebars, controls, pretty big change, I would say. These contours, I have CR high bends with the risers, like the I don't know what you call them. They're like an adapter converter kind of thing. That brought the bars up a lot, which helps for me. I'm 6 foot tall. I have a pretty tall torso too. Grips, whatever. I'm rocking pillow tops right now. I actually really like them. They work well. I've got these hand guards, which you can kind of see. It's a little bright, but yeah, they've definitely saved the levers. I've bent a few levers on this bike back when I was using the stock guards, and I really like these. They're compact, and they don't get in the way when you're steering. Stock mirrors, just totally fine. For my phone, I have the quad lock with the anti-vibration mount, which is honestly really, really nice right up here. I actually keep my phone vertical because I find that I use Apple Maps typically when I'm on highways, and I just keep my phone vertical in here, and it's so nice to have that up, you know, just below my eye level, not be like, you know, glancing down and taking my eyes off the road. So I really like this mount. I usually don't keep my phone on when it's really, really hard trail riding, but for everything else, lighter trail riding to highway stuff, that's perfect. Added some USB power. This is from SRC Moto. Really nice upgrade. I just like having my phone up here charging and having the ability of just charging electronics when I'm bikepacking on the road. Not really a modification that I would say everyone needs, but this is a bear spray holster. I've been in bear country a few times. I've had bears run in front of me on the trail, and it's just kind of nice to have that handy, and also like just kind of seamless. Fits right in here. You know, I love this little tower. I've actually been considering getting a taller windshield for it. SRC makes one. I think it would look nice. SRC also makes this light guard. I don't know if I've had experiences where I've had rocks fly up here and I've been really in fear of breaking this, but it is very expensive. I think it's like $600, $700 to replace this light. So, you know, the $70 guard looks nice, but also it's probably going to save me someday. Tires, been through a few. Well, first off, I'm on, I think, just over 7,000 miles on the bike. I actually just changed the front tire. I got quite a bit of life out of that first front tire. And now I'm on a Dunlop 605. Just trying it out, seeing how I like it. And so far, so good. It's been hooking up pretty well. I also really like the price. It was only $55, which is nice. In the back, I wanted to try a Dunlop 605 in the rear, but I got a kind of ruined a tire in Joshua Tree this year, and I ended up getting a Trail Wing tire by Bridgestone. This is the, what is it? TW302. And this has been pretty good too. I'm actually starting to see a little bit of wear happening with it, but this is considered a 50-50 tire, which I think for my purposes is actually really nice. I don't find that I'm lacking on the dirt. It's not like you need a crazy big paddle with this bike either. I feel like there's not a lot of rear wheel spin with this bike. So as long as it has good knobs, I find that I don't really lose my rear end. And the front end seems to be really planted, and also it's just nice to ride on the highways this way, or really packed gravel. What else is really notable? Oh yeah, there's a big one up front. How could I forget this SRC skid plate setup? You can actually see before I had it, this is the crash that caused me to buy it. I have all this stitching on my plastic. Fell over when I was in Sedona on a trail. It really wasn't that big of a crash. I just kind of like slid out when I was on some mud and it cracked that. I looked up the price of it. I was like, wow, that's nuts. I'm not spending $250 to replace that right now. And also I'm not gonna have that happen every time I crash. So I bought this guard from SRC, which, you know, it's a bit pricey. It's like a $450 piece. It also adds quite a bit of weight to the bike down low, but really, really impressed with it. You know, every time I've dumped the bike over now, it rests on that. Nothing else gets touched. The bike has just been in a lot better condition since I got that. It protects things. I kind of wish I would have gotten it to begin with, but lessons learned. My only concern with it actually is that when the bike bottoms out, it sounds like the tire just catches right here. You can kind of hear like almost like a pluck sound. It's, you know, it's just like rubber plucking on the piece of metal. You can hear that every once in a while. Not really sure if everyone's experiencing that. Maybe it's something that SRC could modify. You know, they could, you know, they have these bends right here. Maybe there's a way that they could just bend that little section in as well. Not sure what that'd be like, or if it's worth the time machining that way for them. But yeah, really happy with the skid plate. It's really protected the bike in a lot of ways. What else? That's about it, honestly. The bike's been a really fun experience. I would say that the next few things I want to do to it are, I want to add a new type of intake system. I'm not sure what that looks like entirely yet. If it's like putting a pre-filter in there, because it's just a paper filter on this bike. And I know that there are a few upgrades out there right now. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the intake system a little bit more. I usually ride on my own. I'm usually not getting dusted by other people. So it hasn't been too bad on me, but yeah, riding with other people, I would say upgrading the filter setup would be really wise. Otherwise, really happy. Oh, you know what? I just about forgot. It's something that's not seen that I added. Right here, this comes with a 14-tooth sprocket, and I changed it to a 15, and I believe it's a Sunstar sprocket. I found some guy on like Thumper Talk who was talking about it, said it fit, so I gave it a shot, and I'm actually really happy with that modification, because the bike used to really rev out on me when I was going down like interstate kind of roads at 65 to 70 miles per hour, and I really didn't want it to be hitting the rev limiter like that. And ever since I changed that, it dropped my RPMs by at least 500, and it's just way, honestly, I really think that they should sell the bike gear that way. It does a lot better on the highways, and I would say that I rarely ever touch first gear on this bike. It's, you know, I've probably only used first gear a handful of times. I always start in second, even off the light. It hasn't changed that ability. I thought it might have, but I still can start in second gear as long as I'm not going up a hill or something. And I actually really like where it landed with trail riding too. I feel like the bike, I can keep it in third gear, and at my pace, I can just keep it right in the sweet spot and be riding within third the whole time. Shift up to fourth every once in a while if I get a good straight. But yeah, I feel like that was a nice change for me, mainly for the highway riding, but also for the trail riding as I've gotten faster on this bike and more comfortable with it. Just being able to rev out third a little bit more and sit in that gear and not feel like I'm constantly between third and fourth, rather just kind of like sitting within third, revving it out, maybe hitting fourth every once in a while. But yeah, this terrain out here, this isn't really an example of the trails, but it's a lot of two tracks, what do you call it, like a split track trail, whatever you call it, like something that Jeeps or side-by-sides go down. And yeah, I find that gearing works really well. But the biggest benefit is really just going down the highway and not having it rev out quite as much. So that's it for this video. Hopefully all that was helpful, and see you in the next one.